Hi everyone, welcome to Signals. I'm your host Gwen Chen. Our guest today is Kelly Breslin Wright. Kelly is a true sales and go-to-market powerhouse. She helped scale Tableau from zero to a near billion-dollar business. Over the years, Kelly has sold everything from books, training, to mortgages and technology, bringing a people-centered approach to every stage of growth. As a longtime user and fan of both Tableau and Gong, getting time with her is especially exciting. Today, we will break down the early deals, customer insights, and leadership lessons behind building and scaling some of the most iconic businesses in tech. Kelly, welcome to Signals.
Thank you so much, Gwen, for having me. I'm excited for the conversation.
How did you first find your way to sales, and how would you describe your career journey after that?
Oh, that's a big question. There's some people that just fall into sales later in their career. That was not me. I was pretty much always kind of destined to be in sales. I was the one selling things when I was a kid, and then I started my own business in college, selling educational books door to door, which we could talk about that, but that was a grind. Taught me a lot about grit and entrepreneurship and character building of just how to interact with people and how to storytell, all of that. And that is when I fell in love with selling, because over those 4 summers in college, I sat down with over 12,000 families in their homes and saw basically all different stars and stripes, all different types of people and situations. And I fell in love with being able to help people and having so many different situations. And so for my career there, I sold in college. Then I ended up working for Dale Carnegie Training, where I sold public speaking training, management training, sales training. One of my clients was Bank of America, and they hired me away, and I sold residential mortgages. Then I went back to business school for 2 years, did a little bit of management consulting at both McKinsey in my summers. And then I went to Bain after I graduated. After a short time consulting, I just thought, when I'm really a salesperson. And so I jumped at the start of the internet boom. I went to a small company called Ad Hoc. I was there running sales and client services and business development. And then after that, I started as the first salesperson at this little tiny startup called Tableau Software. I was employee number 10 there. I joined 1 month before we launched version 1 of the software and was at Tableau leading the whole sales and revenue organization there for 12 years, which was an amazing part of the career. When I left there, I started teaching, doing a lot of board work, did a stint at Gong as president and chief operating officer. And now I'm spending most of my time doing culture-driven sales, which is the company that I founded that pretty much takes all the sales and go-to-market lessons that I've learned over my career, puts together in a way that I can now teach this to MBA students and then help companies as they're looking at implementing best practices to go scale go-to-market.
What a career. Several keywords keep ringing in my mind. You mentioned a lot about help other people and then the character building. So I was wondering, along the way, from selling books to training to mortgages, you've held a lot of leadership roles, including some of the advisor roles in multiple hyper-growth companies. Looking back, what are the key experiences or lessons that shaped your approach to sales and leadership?
That's a big question. My philosophy really comes back to sales is all about emotionally connecting. Oftentimes people are thinking it's about pitching their wares, having the best way to talk about your features and benefits, and all that is true, but buying is still an emotional decision. There's lots of logic in it, but you have to fully understand what the other person is thinking, wanting, and be able to speak in a way where they trust you, have confidence in you, and that you believe the same things, because they're only going to buy from a company and from a person where they see the world in a similar way, because they have to believe you're going to solve their problems. So for me, it all really threads back to having a super clear way to explain what your mission and your vision and your values are. Many companies understate that. They think, you know what, we have a great product, we have product market fit, We know what our benefits are. We know how our product or services are different. And then they start getting down to the nitty gritty, all about the what and the how. This is what we sell. This is how we're going to do it. And they bypass the why. For me, so much of being able to establish that trust and confidence is you need first to understand, why is our company here? Why is it that we exist? What is our mission? And how does this mission actually align prospect, customer, buyer with what it is that you're interested in? And the interesting thing, Gwen, is it's not just about a vendor-buyer relationship. It's true in all of our relationships. So if you think about a manager trying to get their team to do something, a manager has to be able to effectively communicate what their why and their purpose is to everyone on their team, because people want to have that unified sense of having a positive impact to move our purpose forward. It is important inside companies as you think about leadership, and it's critical in how companies are interacting with their prospects, customers, or partners as well.
Yeah. So people listen to you. People agree to come into the meeting because of why, not because of what and how.
I'll back up there. Oftentimes what will happen is people will do all this research before. They're actually engaging in the conversation because they have a problem, and the what and the how is going to be really important. But for them to determine which company they're going to go with and which people they're going to enter into a partnership with, they have to have an aligned belief structure of not only believing that you're going to help solve the problem in the right way from a product or service perspective, but that you as an individual, whether you're a sales rep or you're the CEO, or if you're the whole customer facing team, that your company is going to continue to provide the customer service and help them in a way that's going to make their company more successful and solve their problem. And all about this is really comes to not just about the what and the how, but it comes to the why. And even more importantly, like the emotionally connecting, because people making decisions, they make decisions logically, but still parting with money and making a decision to buy is still an emotional decision.
I have a lot of questions on deals. When you were at Tableau, you were the number 10 hire, and you were also the first salesperson. Can you take us back to the moment and describe what was your first deal like, and what did you learn from that experience?
Yeah, well, I think that there's probably a lot of people listening that work at startups or really early stage companies. It's true, even though for big companies, as they launch a new initiative, a new product, or even if you're building a new team in terms of how you're going to be recruiting new like hires to come work for you. And so if I take you back to that moment, so let's roll back. I joined in February 2005, Tableau. And Tableau, we had this mission from the beginning. We help people see and understand data. And at the time, so we help people see and understand their data. That's the only thing that's ever changed with Tableau is we wanted it to be everyone's data, not just their data. The mission has been the same from the beginning. We were very clear on our why. We wanted to help people to be able to work faster, to answer their own questions, to empower people to be self-sufficient with their own data, to make everyone a data analyst or a data worker. And so what happened though is our product was very rudimentary, is just too raw because the product had tons and tons of capability, but we didn't connect to many data sources. We didn't have all the features and functions that people wanted. And so we had to be really, really clear on what is it that we do really well? What is the why? And what are the type of people we're going to want to help? We knew we could help people that were so frustrated that they couldn't answer their own questions. They were dependent on other people. And so we were clear on who we could help, why we could help them. And we were early days, you're selling a lot of the mission because your product's not there. So you're having people that are willing to go on this journey with you because they believe in you and they believe your approach. And so what happens is oftentimes early companies, they're so focused on selling the features and the functions, but there's so much that they don't do yet. So you need to be clear on who's your ideal customer profile, who has such an intense issue with the current status quo that they want to change. These are the ones that believe in you and want to go on this journey with you because they really want to be like the missionary to have it. So early sellers are missionary evangelical. One of the stories I tell, you would ask like, can you tell an early customer journey or an early customer story? I think this one illustrates it really well. I call it the printer story. What this story is early days, a few months after we launched, we had this opportunity for a customer to buy. I had sent over a trial. They were trying to do some analysis of things that they had never done before. We had a 14-day trial, had coached through of, hey, can you actually get this? Can you get the analysis that you want? After a few days, this guy called me back and said, Kelly, I found this amazing finding. And like, we have to go share it. We've never been able to do this with any other software. And this is where in my mind, I'm like, okay, well, this is great. They can't do it. And he said, well, we just have a challenge though, because I can't figure out how to print it. And, this is early days, 2005. I was most tech savvy. There was print screen, but I wasn't smart enough to come up with that at the moment. My answer was, well, you can't print because we actually don't have that feature yet. That feature will come at some point. And he goes, oh, okay, that's fine. I don't need to print. Can you just tell me how can I export it to PDF? And then I can just share it with the PDF. It's like, oh, that's another great feature that's on the roadmap. We don't have export to PDF. And he said, okay, well, can I publish it up to the web? Like most of these other software have a way that you could publish it. And now today, like you couldn't even think about that because it's all SaaS now. But back then in 2005, it was like, okay, well, that's our web product and that's in development. It maybe will show up in a couple of years, but we don't have it yet. And he said, okay, Kelly, I love this finding, but there's a problem. I can't print it. I can't export it to PDF. I can't publish it online. Like, how in the world am I going to share it? And I had said, this is something that's really useful to you, right? And he said, yeah, like if I were to show this to people, like everyone's going to want Tableau because we couldn't be able to do this in any other, we couldn't get this answer any other way. And I said, where are these people that you're trying to show? He goes, oh, they're in my office. They're just down the hall. And I said, are you on a desktop or a laptop? And he said, I'm on a laptop. And I go, okay, it's easy then. You just undock your laptop, pick it up, walk down the hall, and you show it to him. And he goes, okay, well, that was totally not the answer I was expecting. Let me try that and I'll call you back. He hung up, did his thing, called me back a little while later. And that was our biggest sale to date. He bought so much software, which at the time was like 10 licenses and they were $1,800 each. So it was an $18,000 sale. But the reason I tell the story is if someone believes in what you believe and you can convey your mission and your why, for him, it was, we have never been able to get to this insight. And we were just able to do it so much faster and so much easier. That's going to save so much time and actually transform our organization. Then it doesn't necessarily matter that you don't have all of these things that every other competitor has, because the one thing you have of how you're communicating your why, your mission is so compelling, it's going to drive people to act. And so each company has to figure out what is it that is so compelling and differentiated about what you have that people, even if you don't have all the bells and whistles, or even those things that are the staples that they might expect, if you can solve their biggest problem and help them to believe what you believe, that you can do that better and differently than anyone else, they will buy. And that is the power of, in that we talked about the mission, the vision, being clear about your narrative and your differentiated values, but then also the power of storytelling.
I have a follow-up question on that.
Sure.
So the buyer mentioned, do you have this? Do you have that? So Sounds to me, this is like a feature request questions. So in early days at Tableau, did you take a lot of requests to product engineering team? How did that work?
And that's where you're iterating early days, even the later days on the product market fit. If I go back to those days, if a prospect or a customer will ask us, hey, Kelly, I'm trying to do this, I can't figure it out. Like of 100 questions, there were maybe 99 things we didn't do. But the one that we did exceptionally well. And when I left Tableau 12 years later, it might be out of 100 questions, there was only one or five that we didn't do because we did most of the things. But you have to be able to balance. I think it's really important to balance because what happens is, of course, you want to take all of those features and function requests back and be able to prioritize those so that you can deliver products and features that the customers want. But you need to balance it because oftentimes your prospects and customers, they're asking for things that they've already seen or they've already conceptualized. And especially for companies who are real transformational companies and disruptors, which we were at Tableau, we were at Gong, many of the boards I've sat on have been the same. You're trying to disrupt and transform an industry by creating ways of doing things that no one's ever conceptualized before. And so you have to be careful. I remember one specific situation where it was really early, like our average order size was maybe $10,000. Well, actually, early days, it was like $1,800 just people were buying one desktop license at the time. And we had a few customers that said, we'll give you $1 million, but we need you to build this and that. It would have taken the majority of the development team to go do something in a custom way for this one customer that would have solved their need. But we had to actually go back. This is why mission's so important. Go back and think about our mission, which was we help people see and understand their data. And so our goal was to help the most hugest volume of companies and people to be able to quickly and easily answer their own questions. That's meant on all different data sources, all types of questions, all types of users with very simple, easy UI that was quick and easy and nimble and beautiful. And some of these customers, this one customer that was asking for something that was very custom and tailored, that would have been great for that customer, but it wouldn't have helped us on this journey to do all these things that were staying true to our mission to help the greatest number of people. And so we ended up saying no. And your early investors, sellers were like, wow, Kelly and the management team, you're crazy. Why would you say no? We get this money. But when you're building a company, you have to be thoughtful about staying true to your mission, focused on your purpose. You have to be intensely focused, and you have to be balancing the short term with the long term. Many companies get so hungry, their eyes get so big. They go take this deal and it turns them this way. And then they go take this deal and it turns them this way. And now they've had 3 or 4 big wins, but it's totally unclear what company that they're building and how is their product actually going to stay on track. So it's always balanced. Yes, you want to hear from all the customers. And we did that. We always let our customers vote on what was going to be highest priority, but you also need to stay true and intensely focused on what it is that you do well, what it is that you do that's differentiated, and what is your mission and why, and stay on that path.
Mhm. How do you know the mission you are on is correct? What are the indicators that tell you before even landing the first deal that you're on Tableau or another startup is onto something? So I ask this question because a lot of startup founders is probably thinking the same, right?
Product market fit is very iterative at the beginning. You get product market fit and you get this feedback loop of your customers love what you have. And so sometimes they'll talk about they love what you have on the product. Sometimes they'll love what you have on the mission, but you have to actually deliver on it, right? You can't just be talking about, I mean, this is a problem. Like if you're only selling the mission and not delivering it on the features and functions and actually helping, like at Tableau, if I go back there, we were saying you can do things faster and easier. And they would download the product. They would test out the product. We would give them some basic training and they would say what was taking one person or teams of people weeks and months and years to do, one person with virtually no training could do in minutes or an hour. we were constantly validating that it was working and our mission was there. Now, if you are at a place where you have a mission and you're talking about it, and then you're selling something and the customers are saying, hey, I believe in what you're saying, but this isn't working, then you need to be iterating. Or you might be really passionate about a mission and then you're talking to people and no one cares. So remember that why has to resonate. What we did at both Tableau and at Gong, you're trying to create a movement around you of passionate people that believe so fiercely in what you believe that they want to come on this journey with you because they want this problem solved and they want to be part of that. And so again, everything is a balance. You can't just talk about the why without delivering, but you can't just deliver without actually having an overall purpose and vision as to why. It's a tricky balance.
Yeah. Talking about your vision, your mission, and then tying that to a concrete product and keep pitching it to customers so that you can find your people who are passionate about your mission and also about your product. I've seen a slide shared by somebody on the podcast showing that it takes this amount of years for a company to land their first deal and then to find their product market fit. What about Tableau and Gong, if you have that number on top of your mind? In what year did they land their first deal?
I wouldn't agree with that. I mean, look at AI companies now. AI companies are coming out, and there's some AI companies that, like literally in a matter of months, they have millions and millions of dollars in revenue because they've hit well on product market fit. So it's hard to be able to generalize. If you actually develop a product where it is very needed and you're speaking to people, you can do things much faster. I mean, now it does take time to develop it. So maybe what that person was saying is that they're developing things in the lab and it's taking time to build the technology before they go. So I'm not sure what the context is. But I think let's go back a little bit to how you started off that question, where you said you have the mission and vision, you have the narrative. How are you figuring out how you actually tell that story in a way where it resonates? Gwen, you just hit on, this was the impetus for me founding Culture-Driven Sales. What you talked about is like, how does a company actually think about crafting, building, and executing a go-to-market strategy? I mean, that's a very, very big question that we're not going to be able to tackle the whole thing in this podcast. But I think one of the challenges that companies have, and I see this with small companies, I see this as companies get bigger and they're launching new product lines or new services. I see this as companies, whether they're a startup going from 10 to 50 million to 100 to $1 billion, trying to be a public company, or even big public companies that are launching new ones, all have these challenges. Oftentimes what happens, they have this product, they have this idea, they even get product market fit. Then they take it, they throw it over the fence to the go-to-market team. So they basically say, sales and marketing, we have this amazing thing. You guys go figure it out, go sell it, and let us know how it goes. And so what ends up happening is then companies go, well, why do they have a misalignment between the product team and the sales team, or the sales team and the marketing team? Why is the sales team trying to sell something that's not what the product team is building? And so what you need to think about, and this is actually a very persistent and pervasive problem, of how can you tie the corporate strategy, which is usually very immersed and very tightly bound with the product strategy. So the corporate strategy, product strategy, how can you tie that with the go-to-market strategy? How can you make it that what you're actually thinking about doing at the corporate level, that's threading through the way you're showing up for prospects, the way you're talking about yourself, the way you're marketing, the way you're engaging with your customers, the way you're telling your narrative. And often what happens is, like one specific example, you might have a CEO that has this idea, understands the mission so clearly, or can articulate the why. They can go talk about this with their investors and with their early customers. And then they say, okay, now it's time to go hire salespeople. So then they hire salespeople, but what do? They go tell the salespeople, and they do training on features and functions. They don't explain to the salespeople, what is the why? What is it that's actually resonating with the audience? What's the narrative around why people should even care. And so it ends up being very tactical. And so what is really important is when you think about the go-to-market strategy, is it has to thread all the way back up. You have to say, well, what's the corporate strategy and how can we tie this with the go-to-market strategy, make sure it's aligned. And then you think all the way through, what's the mission? What is the company's story? What are the differentiated value propositions? And then how do we go position this to the ideal customer profile and the personas that actually care the most about what we're talking about? And all of the go-to-market and sales focus flows from that instead of just starting in the middle and forgetting about all that alignment that goes all the way back up to the why.
So when you are hiring the first salesperson or the go-to-market team, think about why first, as opposed to jumping to the details.
Actually, everyone that we had come into the company, it wasn't just on the sales team. It was at Tableau. We did this again at Gong. I see this done effectively at many of the companies. I've seen many in tech, but you can see many other companies that do it. We talk about best practices of this in my class that I teach at University of Washington, Foster School of Business, and at NC State, is all employees that come into a company, regardless if they're in sales or not, they should be able to articulate the essence of your company. What is your mission and why do you exist? If people in a company, whether in marketing, sales, product, or recruiting, don't understand the point of your company, what is the purpose of what you're doing, then it'll be hard. Like, think about how would a recruiter go hire your talent to work at your company if they can't effectively communicate why your company exists, who your company is, and why that matters. Especially in today's world, people want to work at a company where they're not just a cog in a wheel. People are jumping companies all the time. They're not just working for their salary. They're not going to just start at a company and stay there for 30 years. They're going to join a company where they're passionate about what the company does, that they think that they can make a positive impact, and that they believe in what you do, right? That's what's going to motivate people. I mean, you go ask people about engagement and why they stay at companies. It's because they want to have an impact and they want to be able to make their mark on something that they believe in what the company does. You can always find outliers. That's not the case, but that's what most people want. And if people believe in what the company does and they're passionate about that mission and why, then they'll work harder and they'll put in more effort. When people feel like they're just a cog in the wheel and they're just there for a paycheck, they're not going to be as engaged. And so, especially in light of this world of AI, where AI is doing so much of the work, the people side and the why do I want to be at this company is going to become even more important. People maybe don't realize that yet, but it's going to become more and more important.
So right now, people are using AI to write copy, to automate a lot of processes. You talk a lot about why and culture-driven sales. What matters more now, how today's sales team should approach sales?
I think when there's so many amazing benefits of AI, and all divisions and departments are seeing that, but with sales and go-to-market, it's profound. Let's talk about how AI is so helpful. It used to be that salespeople had to spend massive amounts of their time, and marketers too, doing tons of research, trying to figure out what do people want? What is it that are the gaps? What are all the competitors doing? What is sentiment analysis saying? And all of that research, boom, you could go ask AI, and AI can get that much more. I remember it wasn't even that long ago. It was probably like 6 to 10 years ago. We would ask our sellers and our SDRs, sales development reps, even marketers, like how they were spending their time. And it was shocking to me because oftentimes it was like between 40 to 60% of their day was being spent on research. That means they weren't selling. They were trying to do all this research before they actually picked up the phone to dial. And there was such bad data, and it was like they were trying to make a mess of it. So everyone, productivity and efficiency is way, way, way more positive. That's the first thing. Secondly, in terms of just follow-up, Now I can say, like, think about all the things Gong does. Gong has AI agents for everything. We can do call recording. We can tell you, like, what is it that you're hearing from your customers, drafting the best email, reminding you and prompting you when you should follow up, being able to tell you which leads are the hottest. Like all of this, there used to be tons of marketers and sellers who were spending huge amounts of time on that. And AI has made that much more effective. So productivity, efficiency, prioritization, all of that is profoundly changed to the positive with AI. But then you have to look at the flip side and say, AI is doing all this. All of your competitors are getting those benefits too. Also, all of your prospects are doing all this research where there's much less that they have to learn from the salesperson. When they come to the vendor, they already know about the space. They know about all the competitive differentiators typically of all the players in the space. They know what your pros and cons are. They probably know your price. They know what people don't like about you. And so then it comes down to, if AI is doing all these things and AI is making the reason that the buyer has much less to learn from you in their educational process in deciding what they're going to buy, then it becomes much more stark that the human in the loop ends up being a key differentiator. So it's a key point because AI is leveling the playing field, making it so much faster and easier for everyone to come in at this baseline. So if that baseline is just being way more sophisticated for all of the players, then how are you going to compete? Of course, you're going to compete still with the product, but you're also going to compete with your people, establishing trust, confidence, being able to actually build those relationships. And so now everyone's racing to AI, and very soon people are going to come back and think about the human in the loop, because that is going to be a main reason why companies are going to end up going with specific vendors.
Yeah. And human in the loop ties back to why your mission, and that's one of your key differentiator, as well as your company's culture, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the mission and vision is a differentiator, but it's actually the way it threads all the way through. The reason that you have to be really clear on that is, if you're very articulate in your why and why you exist, it should thread through everything. It should thread through how you make decisions, how you engage with your employees, how you engage with your customers, your hiring practices, performance management, all of those kind of things, because you need to have a really solid culture, not only so people will thrive while you're there, but we spend so much time to attract great talent. We'll need to retain that talent too. So if you just have a revolving door of, you have a great product and you bring people in and then they come in and you don't actually spend enough time on people-centric, then if they don't feel like they're building their career, they're supported, they're in a place where they can show up with their authentic self, they don't feel like their manager is in their corner and they feel like they're just a cog in the wheel, they're going to say, okay, you're paying me a lot of money, but I can go somewhere else where I can make a lot of money. And then they leave. Even if you have an amazing product with amazing technology, if you have a revolving door in your people, you're not going to do that. Until we're at a time where bots and the robots and the AI agents are selling to other AI agents and just computers are buying from computers and there's no human in the loop, that might come someday, but we're not anywhere close to that right now. That the human component becomes more and more one of your key differentiators.
Yeah. And upscaling your employees is one of the ways to retain them as well. If you can provide training, not only help them with their career progression, also help them work with customers better. That will most likely keep them longer in the company.
I think that's self-evident. Yeah, that's true.
Circling back to the storytelling and information digestion and updating, today's information might change tomorrow. Competitor keep releasing something, they change their pricing. What is your secret sauce of quickly capturing the latest and then show up ready in the customer meeting?
I think now it's easier to do that because of AI. Like you can get a lot of information because if the information is out there anywhere on the web, AI can go and scrape it and you can get it. I think that is easier now than it has been in the past. People have dedicated folks on their team that also spend time on it. I'm going to have a contrarian answer to this. When you're building a great company, especially a transformative, disruptive leader in the category, you need to be proactive, not reactive. And I think what happens is sometimes companies are so concerned with all the competitors and players are doing. It's almost like you play a game of whack-a-mole. You know that game? We're always sitting. It's like, okay, well, we thought we were going this way, but now this competitor did that, so we want to do it. So whack-a-mole. Now this competitor is doing that, so now go there. And it kind of goes back to what we talked about a few minutes of when you have somebody's willing to give you a lot of money for something that's not on your roadmap. And customers or vendors want to chase that because they see the hot, shiny object. That happens with competitor things too. Because a prospect might say, oh, well, your 3 competitors have this. Why do you not have it? Of course, there's certain things that you need to add in. But if you're really true to this is our mission, this is why we exist, this is our set of really discrete, unique, differentiated value propositions, and this is why we're going to stay true to we do these 3 or 5 things exceptionally well and better than everyone else. You don't need to have all 50 to 100 things. And so I think that there is a balance of if you try to just always be focused so much on the competition, you're basically playing to their drum instead of beating to your own. And so you need to balance. If there's something someone else has and no one's going to buy your product unless you have that, of course, you need to pay attention. If someone's going to come out with something that's so amazing that they're going to disrupt and take away your customers, then you have to be clear that you're not getting into your own innovator's dilemma and you're not having blinders on and you can actually do something that everyone's going to want. But you also need to be very proactive and make sure you're writing your own story and you're staying true on your own path and you are moving forward instead of just playing to hit all of these competitive things that are popping up.
Yeah, that reminds me. Several weeks ago, I talked to a product leader. He told me the fact that your competitor has a lot of features showing on their website, that doesn't mean they're selling those features well. That doesn't mean your customers like those features.
Well, I think it just comes back to, right? People are going to look at the features and functions, and there, of course, is going to be requirements of what they want with those. But ultimately, it's going to be how does the product work? And how does the company feel when engaging with your company and with your company service? And do they feel like they can trust you to be consistent and to stay and to continually meet their needs? It's not going to be just because you have a list of features and functions. Those are the companies that are focusing so much on the what and the how, maybe losing sight of the why. You need to have all 3 of those.
For early founders, just getting out to sell, what is the biggest trap you see them fall into, and what is your advice?
I think that oftentimes when founders and CEOs are trying to hire their first salespeople, they're thinking so much of, I need to have someone that has a long history of selling some huge product at huge dollar value. And those people might be very accomplished sellers, but that doesn't mean that they're going to be great at doing the missionary evangelical sell. So to give a little bit more concrete with this, many founders will say, hey, I want to go hire someone that they had like a top enterprise sales leader at an Oracle or a Salesforce or some huge company at a Microsoft. But you have to remember, people that are selling that product in today's world, they have a huge brand behind them. Like that brand's been around. Everyone knows who they are. That product has every single feature. If you ask 100 questions, the answer is going to be, oh, we do 99. If there's one they don't do, they have armies of people that can go and help and address. And if you're a startup, you have virtually no brand recognition. No one's heard of you. You don't have all this referenceable customers. You're very scrappy. If someone wants something, you have a very small team to go and do it. You're selling things where if they ask you 100 questions, the answer is we do only 1 or 2 or 3 of those. You don't do so many. And so you need to have the person who is very driven, who's super passionate about the space. They are so passionate about your mission and your why. They're very clear and compelling communicators, meaning they're good communicators, they're good storytellers because they can tell the story and the narrative. They're great listeners, but they also need to be flexible and nimble and agile and curious and want to learn with the growth mindset. You'll hear many salespeople are driven and competitive, but are they the best at emotionally connecting through storytelling and communicating? Do they have super high empathy? Do they have this growth mindset? Are they very high on that agile flexibility, adaptability? Are they willing to wear many hats? That's a very different profile than what you'll see from some of these super experienced, very successful salespeople that work in huge companies. So I think you have to be thoughtful about who is it that you're selling to and what is it that you want them to do. I found that oftentimes it's hungry, driven people with less experience that are amazing communicators, have very high empathy and very high growth mindset that end up being the most successful when it comes to startup salespeople.
You talked a lot about emotionally connecting to customers. Some of them are natural. I mean, it comes back to their personality. But can these traits be trained? And how?
I think, yes, they have. I mean, it's interesting too, because sometimes there's all these stereotypes of the salespeople. So first there's the negative stereotypes of pushy and aggressive, like the very confident, egocentric, used car salesperson that you've seen from many, many decades ago. I think that's a super unfair representation because the best salespeople are ones that they tend to just be good humans. Like they're warm, caring, trusting, and empathetic because that's who people want to be around. But I think if you look at it about for training, a lot of what sales has evolved, especially now because AI is leveling the playing field where people can get all the research and education. And when someone comes to talk to the vendor, they already are super well informed. What is the job of a salesperson? People want to do business with companies who are going to help them get better, who are going to educate them, who are going to push them a bit out of their comfort zone. In order to get better, you need to change and evolve, and change and evolution is hard. And so you have salespeople that their job is to fully understand what is the situation of the prospect and the customer and be able to nudge them and sometimes even push them harder to change. So you need to educate. And I teach this in my culture-driven sales class. When you think about the whole go-to-market arc and how to create a really ideal narrative, you want to be able to understand what is the state of the status quo? And what is it about that status quo that's really frustrating people? And, this will be different depending on what your product and your service is. But if you're doing this narrative the right way, you're able to say, here's the status quo. Here are the challenges in the status quo. And here's what would happen if you actually solve those problems. If you solve the problem, here's going to be the desired state. Here's the promised state that you want to go to. And you kind of paint this picture. And this picture is painted to help the prospect believe what you believe. But you shouldn't have to be talking so much about your company when you do it. You're just stating the picture of the truth of what the world is. Here's the status quo. Here are the challenges. And this is where you want to go. Now, if you get the prospects that they believe in what you believe, then you should be having a narrative that your own company is saying, actually, our differentiated value proposition is the 5 things that we do best. Exactly these 5 problems that we just talked about that you want to have fixed. And so these early day salespeople, even later salespeople, but especially important for early days, they need to create and storytell in this way where they get people to actually believe what you believe. So by the time they start pitching your product and your company, like the prospect's already going, oh, I love this. We need to solve it. Tell me more. And then you're just saying, if this is what you believe, then we can help you because what we do exactly solves the problem that you're trying to fix. And many companies get so into features and functions, even if their feature and function does address that, they haven't painted the picture yet. And the customer, if you're trying to push them to move, they have to actually be able to see and understand, oh, I actually do need to change. Instead of just saying, oh, that's interesting. I understand the why, but why now and why change? It's not necessary for me now.
Well, we covered so many questions, Kelly. Is there anything else you want to share to early stage founders, like practically what they should do, what they should focus most of their time on?
Yeah. Well, I think I've always said every time I do a podcast or a talk, I have to go back to talking about what the top priorities should be for any founder, for any startup. And I think so many folks are focusing on product and AI and strategy. And of course, all that is important. Just we talked earlier about the human in the loop. And I'd like to end with this of it literally all comes back to people always. It's people who are building our products. It's people who are buying our products. It's people who are hiring people on our team. It's people who are managing our team. Even if you think about all those AI agents and bots, at some point, there's a person that is helping to direct what those AI agents are doing. And so we need to make sure that we always are thinking about how can we create companies where our employees feel like they can be their best selves and that it's a place that they want to be, and creating an environment where our prospects and our customers and our partners, they trust us and they know that we have their best interests in mind. And so just all I can say in closing is it's all about the people always. So always, always, always make people your number one priority.
This is fantastic. Thank you so much, Kelly, for your time and for what you do.
Thank you so much, Gwen. It's been a fun conversation.